that many of you have hung in here, or hung in there. Thanks for that. We're not going to review immediately how last week went. We will do that at the end of this particular presentation. I'd like to hear your thoughts about just what we did and whether or not you liked it. So today what I'm going to focus on is what comes next, right? So after you've gone over the peer review for the presentation, you have both your rubric and you have the guided peer review forms for what the summary was like and what the teacher's expectations for grades. The next thing is, how are you going to look at the peer review forms? So we will do this last actually. Grading. These are some not concepts, it's the wrong word. These are some ideas for how you can grade peer review. Because one of the problems with peer review is that students don't take it, maybe they don't take it seriously. And so one of the ways that we can help them to understand it's important is by attaching a grade to peer review. And so we have to grade all elements though. We want to grade that they brought 2 copies of the paper to class. That's just 5 points. And then we have, they provided peers with specific constructive written feedback. You can choose anywhere that says from 0 to 5 points. Participated actively in discussion of each paper. So ideally, in the last class, you met, you were doing your peer review individually, and then you were talking together. And then you talked in the small group. So that would be where you were participating actively. And this is something that you can have the peers judge, right? So there could be a form on the peer review, was active during discussion, and they can say yes or no. And so this is something that you can have them do feedback on each other about. So you're not running around the classroom like taking yes, yes, active, 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 you know, because that's not the most effective way to measure. They wrote specific responses to peers' feedback, 0 to 5 points, and 0 to 20 points, depending on what you want to do, would be the total score for the peer review. So obviously what this entails though is that when they turn in their final copy of the summary, they're not only turning in their final copy, but they're turning in their first draft, their second draft with the peer reviews, and their final draft. And so this process I enjoy because I get to see the growth of their writing. So I'm looking at how it has changed and adopted, and I can see it helps me to be more thorough in my analysis and assessment of their work, because I see where they started and where they finished. And I think that it really helps us to get a better idea of where the student actually is than just seeing the final paper. And we might also call this a portfolio, this style where we put all the pieces together. So this is what we would think about when we're encouraging students to participate by giving them a grade for peer reviewing. You can also grade like this was a well done peer review. So it was, you would have to define what P plus would be. So P plus, what do you think is effective as a peer review? What would you give your partner a P plus for? What do you think? For me, I would want to have helpful feedback, things that I can actually work on. What else would you want from your peer?
Some ideas.
Yeah. Okay.
Fresh ideas, new ideas.
Some new ideas. All right. So clear feedback, possibly new ideas. What else might you want from your partner?
To be sincere.
To To be sincere, okay. Let's start, actually, since this one is so hard, what about what you don't want from your partner?
Negative respond.
Okay, a negative response.
Here we have to be sincere, a negative response. How to
But
combine.
again, the
Last
previous
time I
time we
said
were discussing
what-
it
I
could
was
be
very
said in
sincere.
different words, you know. So
I know, but
so
I was very
you might say
sincere
it
and she
differently.
said you're very critical.
So, but this is a very, very good point, because one of the things that we have to do with peer review is we have to train each other how to talk to each other. That's why I showed you, I hope,
Yeah.
the video of the 10 things not to do.
Exactly.
Right? With the school kids. Like, this is stupid, this is da, this is
So
da.
this is critical, you know,
So-
negative.
We want to make sure that the way that we express, we're expressing it also about the paper. So when I read this summary, I am confused in the second section. Not you wrote a horrible second section, right? It's just I felt confusion when I read this part of the summary. So you're separating yourself or the author from their own work. You're only talking about the work. And that helps to distance and create more of an environment. But this is one thing that you will have to work with students on, right? Because what we see right here between the two of you is that you have different ways of looking at what does it mean to be critical. And so we have to be self-aware of how we are interacting with other people and try to monitor our own internal way of expressing things so that we don't hurt other people's feelings. So this is challenging for students. But it's something that is developed also through the peer review process. No, I'm just joking. I'm totally teasing you. Okay, so minus might be also like lack of feedback. They have nothing to say about anything, or it's very general. Do you remember in the video where she was like, well, I don't know, it's okay. So this would probably be a minus. So what you would do is you would define these and give this to the students and say, you will be graded with a P+, a P, or a P-. And this is the description for how you have to be in the peer review to get a P+. This is the description of how you have to be in the peer review to get a P or a P-. So you're making it very clear through description. And what I would do with the students is what I just did with you. You just had your first peer review. And you remember there were how many steps in peer review cycle? Remember I went through the peer review cycle with you last time on the PowerPoint, and there was a certain amount of steps that you were supposed to take with students as you teach them the process of peer review.
We started what entails,
But when I explained the concept of how to teach peer review, I give you some steps. It was 6. And it started with introducing the concept of peer review, why it was important, having a model peer review, talking about the peer review, what happened, showing examples of good peer review or bad peer review, and having discussions. So after you've gone through that process once and the students are now, they have a feeling for peer review, I would then maybe start using this as a grading technique, but I would have the students define what is a P+, what is a P, what is a P-. Because then again, I'm always trying to make them active in terms of defining their own grades so that they have more responsibility in the classroom. That's one thing that I personally think is important. Okay, so the next step that I do with them that I didn't get to do with you, but after we do a peer review, we may have one more. This could be in any order. This could be after the first time they looked at it, we had common errors, we talked about more information about the summary. We wrote the rubrics together. You may give them like full class correction. This is what I do, because to be fair, a lot of them make the same mistakes. So a lot of it is subject-verb agreement, a lot of it is word choice. And so one of the things that I do, because I don't have time to go through each individual paper, is I still want them to do well, so I do full class correction. And I go over some of the most common errors. And so right now, if you were the students and you've done peer review, you would have revised your paper according to the peer review, and then we would do full class correction. And we would talk about common errors, and I would have you do exercises. I don't have exercises today with the common errors, but we would together go through the exercises, and then they would have some class time to look through their paper while it's still fresh in their mind to see if they have any of the same issues that I identified in this whole group activity. So the biggest one is the use of contractions, and in academic English we don't use contractions. That's just not appropriate. Using colloquial vocabulary. So here is an example. Retirement is something most of us must face sooner or later. And we would want to say retirement is inevitable. Also, look at the difference between the number of words in the sentence, right? I think it was 2 times ago, someone had made a comment about, well, how many words should be in a sentence? And I said, no more than 15 or 16. You really want them to be short and concise to the point in academic writing. This would be okay if it were, if you were writing a novel. And this was the thought process of one of your characters or something. Also, this is also important, but basically avoid other types of conversational-esque language. Okay, here it is on the handout. These are a collection of different resources, and would you pass one back there? That I have collected from the internet. You will notice that at the end of every single section of resources, there is the website. I encourage you to look at the website because they have some absolutely fantastic stuff. You will find this information. The first page talks about clear and concise verbs. We have formal versus informal language and what it looks like. So formal is the use of passive voice, few personal pronouns, neutral verbs are used, so non-emotive verbs basically. Informal use of active voice, use of personal pronouns, I, you, we. Remember that was several slides ago. I said take these out if you have them, take them out now from your writing. And if you turn to the next page, we can see that here it says, do not use colloquial vocabulary. And here are the examples. Above board, reach a happy medium, get through it. And then they have, in the second column, they have what you might use instead of that. So for above board means it's just legitimate, right? A legitimate experience. Reached a happy medium is reached an acceptable compromise, or get through it, so you survived something. And more on the other. Beyond the shadow of a doubt, it's definitely. In recent years, recently, again, why use extra words when you can just use one? Pay lip service to, support through words but not through actions. Well, that stumbling block, a point of contention, etc., etc. So the next part, so I would, if I were teaching these, I might have the students, I might take the commonly used words and phrases that they're misusing and put the academic words and have them match, like have a little vocabulary matching activity where they have both and they have to match what the synonyms would be. Does that make sense? so that way it's sort of drilling. And it would be the ones that come from their paper. So I might have these, but I would take the ones that I see the most problems with from their paper. I would also do that with two sides of the coin, a corn. I've had all of the above, and any like idioms like that, I will also give them other ways to say that, because they're obsessed with using idioms because they think it makes them sound more native. But native speakers don't use that in every single paragraph. They may be one in like a 20-page paper, and so they don't sound like they know what they're talking about when they do use that. So I try to train them out of it. Okay, so the next one, avoid using run-on expressions. So things like so forth, so on, etc. I really hate that when students use so on or etc. I'm like, well, if you're too lazy to finish your sentence, I'm not reading your paper. And I'll grade only up to that point. Because to me, this is just being lazy. What, and so forth. What does that mean? Etc. Well, list it out or tell me more information. Don't just end at etc. Like, make it stronger, make it more interesting. Anyone can say, yeah, etc., etc. This is meaningless. You can see how passionate I get about writing. And do not use rhetorical questions. This is another thing that just kills me. If you're gonna write, like, just don't use rhetorical questions. If you're gonna ask me a question and I have no way of responding, why are you asking me a question? We all know that you're gonna give a response to this question. Why bother with the question? You're wasting my time. Get to the point. I don't want questions. They're not hooks. They're not interesting. Don't use them. And then, obviously, you want to just, like I said, you want to train students to get to the point. Rhetorical questions, to me, when I read it, I just think, again, lazy. Or they don't really know how to draw in the reader's attention through their own writing, so they're using these formulaic expressions or this formula for writing that is not interesting because they themselves don't know how to express it. And as you can see here, sometimes they don't even express the right question. And so they've already set you up and you're like, wait, but this isn't about that question. And or they don't give you a full and complete answer to the question. So it's better not to have the question at all. But this is a very common error for not new writers, but writers who are just beginning to start academic essays, because there is a belief from somewhere out there that these sorts of questions are okay. Possibly, I might show them the difference between a scientific journal article and a paper that would have questions that are research questions. Because sometimes they get confused. Sometimes they think, well, you can use questions in papers because I've seen them before. And it's like, yes, well, you can show what your research questions are, because you then answer the research questions, or you say, hey, we did the research and there wasn't a response. We can't answer this question yet, it's still outstanding. We suggest X, Y, and Z to finish the research and to find a result. But that's a different usage of questions. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And sometimes the students, they didn't realize the difference between the rhetorical question and an actual research question. Okay, so they do have some examples on the next page of rhetorical questions. What is a team? A team can be one person, but will usually end up including many more. Why bother with what is a team? Next. Oh, did you not get this one? Here. So this one I think is a very good example of how it just uses space. Because you can see right next to it, they go ahead and just define team. They don't need to ask, what is a team? And then give the definition. You just define it. Okay. It's always a problem when I teach writing because I get too excited. All right, place adverbs within the verb. Adverbs should be placed within the verb group rather than in the initial or final positions. Informal English, adverbs often occur as clauses at the beginning or end of sentences, and then we have the examples, right? For informal, then the solution can be discarded. The solution can then be discarded is the formal alternative. The blood is withdrawn slowly. The blood is slowly withdrawn. So that's also, this would be like, after several drafts, we would start talking about this. This is not something I would introduce on the first draft. I would focus more on very common errors, like I mentioned earlier, like comma splices, subject-verb agreement, things of that sort. But this is another area where they have a lot of problems frequently. Questions, comments, or concerns for the common errors part? No?
How do you teach all that?
So basically, I put the rules up, maybe like this, and then we have an activity. And what I will have done is they will have already given me some of their own work. And I will create the activity using their work, but I will not identify the author, right? And so I'll say, okay, we're going to play a game now. And I'll give them the sentences, and I'll say there's a problem in these sentences. And it's related to this. Find the problem and correct it. And then we go through and we read. And then we choose which group made the correction that is actually correct. So there's lots of different ways to do it. I may do a PowerPoint where I'll have the error written instead of like creating all these extra materials that you then have to cut up and everything. I may have a PowerPoint. So we have this, and then what I would do is I would have their writing and I'd have the problem, and then on the next slide it would be corrected. So I'd say, okay, now in groups work, correct the problem. You have 3 minutes. They would work, and then I would say, boom, here's the solution. Did you correct it accurately? And then they would see
So you
the
don't
difference.
teach them before they write before they write an essay or something. You teach
Well,
them after.
these are rules that they should already know. These are not, these are grammar things that they should have at some point been taught, or I have taught them. And this is like, sometimes when students write, they know the rules, but they don't use them. And so, yeah, it's two different things, right? So this would occur, and this would occur after, in this context. But you make the assumption they've already learned this. Because once they get to this stage of summary writing, they should have already learned at least subject-verb agreement. And for some students, they didn't learn, their teachers never taught them, and this is their first lesson. But it's a good lesson because it has to do with their own writing, and they remember it. And then the next time we write the next paper or summary or whatever, we will probably go through this again, and we'll do it a little bit faster, and then it will be continual review and practice. So it's more internalized. And I did notice, hi, please come closer. That's very far. One of the things that I have noticed is that, as I mentioned previously, my students, you're gonna stay over there? You're welcome to come, please. So I can give you a handout. One of the things with the students that I taught in this method is that they started to self-correct. The papers that I got from when I started to teach them in this way to like the next semester had changed significantly in terms of their errors. And their errors in the ones that we had worked on were reduced. So it seemed to have been successful. I don't know, maybe they just like, I don't know, it worked. So, okay, could you pass that back?
Yeah, sure.
All right, other questions, comments, or concerns? You guys did so much work, we're sort of having a chilled out day today, just to let you know. All right, so another thing before we start talking about what happens with a peer review, what questions you have, et cetera, another thing that I work with students once they have started writing is word lists. The reason that I wait until once they have started writing is because I want them to go through the process of circling it, or thing, or stuff, or whatever it is they continuously use, and recognize they need words. And I also want them to have gotten to a point where they have used he said, she said, he said, she said like 50 times, and they need more words. And so that way they can immediately apply the word lists to what they've written. So the first word list that I'd like to introduce to you, on the next page is the website where I got this from, so you're free to copy it down in a minute. But what I'd like to point out about this word list, which is what I really, really like, you can get practice from this, so you can find activities to practice with your students on these word lists from this website. You also they have flashcards. They have software for flashcards that you can use, and if you have an iPhone, they have software or an app that helps you make tests on the words. So it's wonderful. And all of these are linked to Cambridge Advanced Learners Dictionary. So you start with the word, and then you have all of the different aspects of the word, right? So this is accurate. We have accuracy, accurately, inaccurately, inaccuracies, inaccurate.
Derivation.
Yes, exactly.
Basically, a thesaurus. Yeah.
Well, but a thesaurus would be other words that are the same as that word, right? So it's just the derivations of the word. And so you're not going like, oh, I like the word accumulate, but how do I change it into this form? It gives you already, all of the forms that you would need. What is, okay. Anyway, these are the A's, and that goes on for a really long time. And these are the C's, and that goes on for a really long time. And these are all taken, they're all from academic writing. So my concern would be I can't give my students all of this. This is just way too overwhelming, right? Maybe for me, I'll go through and I'll be like, what is that word? And then I'll run to here, or I'll use a thesaurus and I'll try and find it. But what I do like about it as a teacher is I can go through and I can find maybe from another resource, like the list of the top 200 commonly used academic words, and then I can find the derivations on this list, and it's just very easy. So this is the website where you would find it. Oh, there's also, as you're writing that down, I'd like to also show you back to our wonderful pre-prepared handout. So we have standard transitional phrases. This is a problem area for a lot of students. And they frequently enjoy using stuff like the word so or but at the beginning of a sentence, or even and. And it says it here, but I go through this with them and I cross out the ones that I don't like them to use, that for me are informal. So would be one of those. And so is informal for me because it most frequently is in discourse. It's used as a transition in discourse, but you won't see it as frequently in academic writing, if it's pure academic writing. There are very few journals that I've read that I've seen someone say, so, comma, and then whatever they were gonna say. It's never so. It's like, thus, therefore, accordingly, in short, as a result, blah, blah, blah. But I prefer them not to use but unless they're more advanced, or and, because even native speakers struggle with having a complete sentence beginning with but or and. Most of the time it's a fragment, and fragments are a very big problem for my students. So I'm like, we're just going to cancel those. From the beginning, don't use these words. Use these words instead. So they have a list of appropriate words, and what they are, right? So continuation, conclusion, contrast, comparison, or illustration. So I want them to know how these words are used as well. And then we have useful phrases for reports. So for the introduction, for the research, changing the topic, mentioning other parts of the reports, and numbers and trends. And so there's two sections, and again, you can see that they are specifically where they're taken from, so you can access that if you like what they missed. So the next website is a collection of most frequently used words, and this is fantastic. This woman, I think she's either from New Zealand or Australia, as part of one of her like master's thesis or doctoral thesis. She just created this like list of words, and it's the academic word list, and you can download it. And she has it divided by the general ones. She also has sublist families. So it's further divided into very helpful ways of showing the students how to use these words. And this is where, so it's New Zealand. She was in a university in New Zealand. So you can go and download the word lists from her website. Well, from their website, really. So, for example, earlier I said I might look for the most frequently used words and find the ones that I think are really good for my students to know, and then go back to the first one that I showed you and find the derivations and show my students that. And I might also make a sort of graph like this one did, where it talks about continuation, conclusion, contrast, comparison, illustration. I might also do different categories that would help them to understand how to use the other words. So like, what do you say? The authors state, the authors say, the authors explain, the authors fill in the blank, you know? Everybody have it? Okay. And then finally we have Oxford. So they have a really lovely 3-page word list, which is a lot more manageable. And when you click on them, you can actually, I believe, this is the first sub-list, so this is an academic word list. But they have other academic word lists, but this is perfect. This is the same word list I would give my students at the University of Macau, because it's just, it's very thorough. Although here, I'd like you to notice that they have some of the derivations of the word and they're under it instead of beside it. So it depends on what you think your learners would like. I kind of like it beside it, so they see the connection a lot faster than having them listed boom, 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 but with other words as well. Okay, so questions, comments, or concerns? No? Then we're going back to thoughts on peer review. I wasn't here last week. I'm very interested to see what happened, what concerns you have, what did you like, what did you dislike, what would you change, what worked, what didn't work, all of the above. Yes?
It was kind of different not
Mhm.
seeing you, you know,
Mhm.
just hearing your voice and
Mhm.
imagining where were you, like, what were you doing at this point, and like it was different. I can't say it was weird and not interesting, but it was different. I mean, perhaps it works more and when we might see you. So again, we can prove here the visual attention as well, and the visual attachment, and you know, like perhaps it's easier when we see and hear you at the same time.
Interesting. So if I had had a video, if it were half the screen were the PowerPoint and half the screen were the video, you may have felt more involved.
Yeah, I guess
Interesting.
yes, and also like we were like I was a little bit tensed, and I knew that I cannot ask you questions.
Mm.
If I won't understand something, I'm not allowed to ask you questions. You are not here. So, you know, I tried to lean on my partners or peer workers, you know, so who were involved in this group. So I could kind of figure out that, oh, I can't see her. I can't ask her questions. I can't call her, like, you know.
Right.
So I missed this interaction.
Interesting.
So,
That's
but
interesting.
it was interesting. Like, I mean, it's good experience.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, just to continue that idea,
Sure.
I'd like to add that on the other hand, I felt more responsibility on myself and on my peers, because again, we didn't have you to ask, and we had to ask each other, and that was a very positive moment too for all of us, because we had to work.
I have to admit that I felt very confident that you could do this. And part of that was because I know that several of you have been coming to these workshops for quite some time and have experienced peer review before. We've talked about it before. So I felt confident that you would be able to do exactly what you just said, like take the responsibility and lean on each other.
and we were like playing roles of teacher students together,
Yeah.
because some of us were missing the previous
Yes,
classes.
yes.
It was me, let's say.
Uh-huh.
I didn't attend 2 classes. I haven't received the email, unfortunately, so I thought there won't be the class. So, and they had like
Sasha, yes.
Sasha as well had, and
Ira.
had responsibility on themselves as teachers, you know. So we kind of could, like, we were students and they were teachers, thanks God. So, I mean, like, as we were absent the previous class, they had to tell us everything and share with handouts,
Yeah.
so we could catch everything. And they were prepared, so we were not. It was in Gala, and they had their perfect, well done summaries.
Yeah.
So, you know, here we all are students, and you are the only one who can be the teacher. And the previous class, we were divided, split it into groups. Part of us were teachers, and part of us were students. So it's kind of new experience. You know, they had more responsibilities on themselves. I do agree with that than we did. The previous class was in yellow. Let's say we were working with her. She's absent today, so okay, it was different.
And I felt as if I were on the test because we were limited in time. So do this for 3 minutes and boom, it's over. So do that. It's over.
Yeah, like
time is up.
limit, you know? Yeah, time limit.
Did you feel stressed?
I think he felt because we asked him lots of questions, whether it's right, whether it's wrong. Like he was the head, he was
No,
responsible.
because I was the only one who attended all 3 lessons.
Right,
so.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was the one who suffered the previous time because we were attacking him a lot. Are you sure that's right? Are you sure that's like it was
Where's the
kind of
teacher's statement?
yeah,
Is it?
you know, attitude to the teacher, but so as well to the student as well. Are you sure that's right? He said, yes, that's right. And like we were trying to prove, though we were not attending previous classes,
Right,
like
right.
we were absent the previous time, but we behaved as you know, teacher students, kind of checking him. We were absent. Plus, it was unfair at some point because we didn't have our summaries done. So he had his summary done and said, "I've been doing this for like 3 days, yeah, or like
No,
3 weeks.
3 weeks, 3 hours. It was something 2 hours to 3 hours. It wasn't quick, you know." He said, "I was too responsible to do this," and we were with no summaries at all, like no summary. And the text was rather difficult, interesting, but rather difficult,
It was.
you know, to summarize. So I kind of admitted that, but he was great, and Irina as well. So we were, but still, we were like watching these hilarious videos, you know. So we
Yeah.
tried to make some commands. I mean, like
Yeah.
whether negative or positive about their summaries. Though we even haven't read the text in advance. It was the first time we've seen the text, but we tried to respond thanks to PowerPoint presentation and videos, like
Right.
clips from
Right.
YouTube, right?
Mhm.
Like with
That's
students. So it was really helpful. So what I would like to conclude and admit is that the previous time we had more, you know, PowerPoint material and information like videos, trailers
Yeah.
than today.
Uh-huh.
Let's say when you are in class, you talk more.
Right.
We see you in class, and we have like more interactive activities. When you were absent the previous time, we watched a lot. So you was so smart that you tried to substitute
Myself.
your absence
Yes.
by
course.
video trailers. I mean, so we kind of visualized as well, the same as we do today. But
Right.
you tried to, so it was a great job.
But we missed you.
Yeah, we missed you, and today we are more thankful to you, even though the previous time I think because we might see you,
We
you know.
appreciate it a lot because you just didn't leave us and went to the next, but you prepared a whole workshop for us and then went to the next.
Yes.
Great.
As teachers, we understand it was, you know, part of great job because you dedicated much time to investigating the topic, preparing PowerPoint. Plus, we understand that if you are live, right? If you're live, we have live presentation. You can deviate from the topic at some point. You
Right.
can, you know. Like every class is different. I
Right.
mean, you can improvise
Right.
if to generalize. You
Right.
can improvise. At that point, you could not do that.
That's
Everything
true.
should be calculated. So perhaps, like from my retrospective, today's presentation was easier for you to, not easier, but like.
No, it was. This
It's the
presentation.
wrong word. Like I should say, like not so tensed as the previous time because
Mhm.
you needed to calculate time. You needed like.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
No, well,
So
part of the
now you
reason.
should write to her boss.
No, okay, I will.
About
I
that.
will. No, but actually, one of the reasons that I wanted to do that is because we keep talking about the idea of flipping the classroom and what would it feel like to be a student who is participating in that kind of a classroom. This was extreme because normally the teacher is still there, right? But I think that what you've experienced and what you saw me do is what you would also have to do. So you have to think, they're going to have this question, How can I answer this question? They're probably going to do this, so I need to put this in there so they know that they shouldn't do this or that they should do this. So you're right, it does take a lot of preparation because you have to know what your students will do before they do it. Which a lot of us know that anyway, we just don't think about it because we can deal with it in the moment.
The Victoria page was not found. It goes to the Writing Center, School of Linguistics, Applied Language.
Oh, but probably you can do a search because I'm sure that it was there because it was there last night.
Okay, the search is
Word list, Victoria. I would use her keywords. This is good though. I would use her keywords like AWL or academic corpus, Victoria. You might also look in the School of Ling. Can you see resources and publications on the Victoria website? Is that not it?
Online Dictionary.
Yeah, that's where I got it from. In the sidebar. Does this thing even work? Like over here? Yeah. You can't, okay. But it should have it in there. Yeah. So that's good to know. So in case that exact copy doesn't work, just find Victoria page, and then you can see here it says academic word list.
Yeah.
And then it will pop open and you'll see all of this.
Go to
That
the
was
site
good,
that
but
she's
here.
actually it's a lot simpler. After LAS, just resources / academic word list.
Perfect.
So after resources, mark out Acade,
How did I do
whatever,
that?
and go to academic word list. Okay, A, C,
Oh, there we go.
A, D, E, N.
So just go here. Take out this part. Most frequent. Just end with academic word list. Did you try the other one? Did that one work? Can you try that one? Just to make
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Here it is.
Seems to be the same.
Okay,
I
yeah.
wanted to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
There, peer review
Let's
and
do
the
it.
rubric that you gave
Mhm.
us last time. So, is this peer review based exactly on this rubric, or
Mhm.
this? Because first I thought that the peer review can be done in the following way: this is deleted, and the points are given for each.
Oh,
Is that okay?
I
No.
try it. Try it. Why not?
But
I did
because-
it this way because I want them to be able to respond directly to questions. Because one of the things that I found from the students is that when they see the rubric, they're like, oh yeah, it has that, it has that, it has that. They're not critical in the rubric, but they're critical when they use questions.
But if we look at this peer review, we don't give any points for it. Is it okay?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, because
Or-
remember, this is a
or-
great question. Remember when we come
Is-
up here? The only thing is, here, it would be worth 5 points for that paper to be completed.
so. Is it possible that a rubric can be used by the teacher and the peer review is just for your peers?
Absolutely. So can I have both of them, please?
Yeah.
So they are connected. What I do though, oh I see, that's why that's on 2 pages, that's funny. Okay, what I do try to do is, again, I want them to continue to use and get to know the rubric. Because we go over the rubric in class, but it's in one ear and out the other, right? They're like, yeah, we get it, we know what the right score is, blah, blah, blah. They go to read it and then they go, what does that mean? And I'm like, all right, we just spent like an hour on this. What do you mean, what does that mean? So what I found is that by having them grade each other, they get an idea of what my grade on their paper will be like. And if they're okay with that grade, then they're like, okay, maybe I'll make some of the corrections, but they have a choice. And so that's why I give them the rubric, because I want them to see what that would look like. But the peer review, I mean, this I only did by myself with your input. So this is not by any means like the best possible peer review we could have ever done, right? Because we as a group would have gone through, once it is in this form, and talked about, does it match, what would we add, are all of the elements needed, and which peer review is this? Are you having 2 peer reviews? If you're having 2 peer reviews, maybe you wouldn't focus on all of this, you would just focus on the meaning. And then the second time, you would focus on some of the grammar and the vocabulary and stuff like that.
Well, before coming to your lesson, I made my summary peer review, and it looks like combination. I don't know if it's okay.
Yeah, why not?
So I made like the rubric, and I have to encircle
Okay,
point,
so
and then I
this
have
is
3
very nice.
questions.
So here we have encircle the number of points for each summary.
For each part.
And so there's, each part of the summary of thesis, paragraph, conclusion, grammar, vocabulary, reference. What I would add to this is I would ask them to explain why they circled the number. Because if I got this back and I had all ones, I'd say, why? What's wrong with it? I don't understand. So I would want, you would want to help guide them with a little more specific details. But why not? This is great. I like it. Very
And I
creative.
asked, like 3 questions that you liked about the summary.
So what are 3 things you liked about it? What are 3 things you did not like about the summary? I might change that a little bit. I might say, what are 3 things you would like to improve in the summary? Because we don't want to attach negative. That's right. Do you want to write on here 3 things you want to improve? And what are 3 questions you would like to ask the author? That's a good one. So improve, not like.
All right.
Great. No, I like that a lot. And I think like your style of putting together your peer review will be your style. And you just train the students in your whatever style that is. What style you have. And they will go along with it. Because my style of peer review is slightly different than another colleague of mine, but we were teaching the same course. But it's okay.
So, one more question.
Yeah.
If you don't mind. So, in this question 5, you have in the peer review, you have this can, could, and hedging words.
Yeah, the
So
hedging
is it
words,
good
that's right.
to have this hedging words?
You
in this?
have to.
Oh, right. That's because I don't understand. While reviewing
Yeah.
somebody's summary, I didn't know exactly whether it is good or not to have these hedging words, because there is no hint in this. So just
Okay.
it's okay.
So you have to have hedging words.
You have.
It's required. And does anyone remember why I said it's required to have hedging words in the summary?
Because you cannot say that
Because
who determines something and that's universally true, because
It's right.
the author's opinion.
This is
Right.
true and this
False
is
Exactly.
dichotomy.
So
Exactly.
then I
So-
found one in mine,
False
and I
dichotomy.
wondered if it was okay or not. So
You found a hedging word, or you
yeah, I
found
found a hedging word in mine, so I didn't know it's
in
okay
your
or not.
thesis restatement, right?
In my thesis statement.
Then that's perfect.
So
Then what's the
that
question?
the question is to put something for the person to know that it's okay to use this hedging words.
Well,
Because the person who looks at the summary, he doesn't understand
Rubric.
whether it's okay
Rubric.
or not.
for thesis statement, number 4 contains 1 hedging word. So first, this is a good question, and you're right to ask it, because we didn't go through this as thoroughly as I would with my students, but I would have made it clear in class that a hedging word is a must, as I tried to do here. So when they see this, they would not think that there's a problem with using a hedging word. They would understand, oh, that's right, we have to use hedging words. And it's just one more way for me to get them thinking about their summaries and their self-editing. Does that make sense? Yeah, so I don't think we need to say anything about it being positive because they would have already understood that it should have one. And if they don't understand it, hopefully they're like, you know what, I'll just ask.
The other website works.
How many? 3? Yeah, I think so. That's fine. We can make more copies. Have a seat, Drew. Other questions, comments, or concerns?
You asked if the other question,
The other
it
website.
It works, but unfortunately I'm not able to download the AWFL list from Victoria, either PDF or RTF. Maybe it's time differences or something.
Maybe, yeah. Well, I would still try and play with it and see what happens. You may be able to download it from another website as well. If you Google searched the academic word list, I actually, when I first did the Google search for that, I found several versions of that PDF file. And so I could have downloaded it from another site that was talking about how great her word list was. What else happened for you during the peer review? Nothing? But what did it feel like to be in a peer review? What did you learn from your experience? You learned that you wanted more time, right? You felt like 3 minutes was not enough.
Because when you're here, we can adjust to you. You can give us more time and talk a little bit more. So when we're here without you, we just limit it. And then when we haven't finished it, then we have to stop and do something else.
So, the thing with my students is they're on a strict time limit as well. Like this, what I did with you, I would have had a timer and it would have gone beep, 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 beep in a really obnoxious way so that they would know that now they had to switch. Because I want them each to have an equal opportunity to talk about each other's papers, and I want them to have as many eyes looking at their papers as possible. And in a normal classroom, I only have like an hour and 20 minutes, if that much, right? That would be ideal, but sometimes we only have 45 minutes. So the thing with the peer review is that students will not like being stopped. But part of what we're teaching them is how to manage their time. So they have to be very time conscientious to make sure that they get through all of the material that they need to get through. Because once you start grading it too, then they have, we could just say they have motivation. Because they'll get a grade.
Time is money.
For them, at that point, yeah. So, I would work with them on that as well. So was everybody here for the peer review? Did you all come? No?
We're on different days.
Well, everybody's been on different days. Okay. So, do we have any extra copies of, like, the peer review and yeah, that I could give to them so that they could see? So in order to, because if you were not present, probably you have no idea what we're saying. So maybe what you could do, the people that were present, is sort of explain what you did, and I know we explained it a little bit, but could we explain a little bit more? So that they have a clear idea of what it was like. For example, what was the first thing you did, how did you do it, etc., etc. Just do a talk through, please, for them. No, with just in the large group, yeah, in the class. Who would like to start?
We peer reviewed each other.